This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Warning, this episode contains mentions of miscarriage and child loss. Listener discretion is advised. I'm Georgia, and welcome to Finding Hope, the podcast that finds the good in the midst of the bad. Each episode, we meet someone who's had a bit of a hard time, but has found hope and healing along the way. And hopefully they inspire you to embrace the good in your world as well. Episode 21, Michelle Ning. Michelle Ning had always wanted to be a mum. After the birth of her first child, Preston, she knew that she wanted to give him a sibling. But it wasn't that easy. After a relatively smooth pregnancy, Michelle didn't expect the heartache that was to come in her journey of creating her family. This is a story of pain and sadness, but also resilience, courage, and what can happen when you surrender to God. Let's meet her. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your family?
I'm a mum. I used to be a journalist, but now I'm a stay-at-home mum. I've got two boys who are 7 and 3, and my husband, Jonathan.
Did you always want a family?
Yeah, I think growing up, that's what I always wanted. I come from a family like my parents separated when I was 13, and I just remember thinking of wanting to kind of build a family of my own and, have a husband and kids. That was something that was always a desire in my heart.
Can you tell me when and how you became a Christian? Because that's going to be, obviously a very important part of this story. How did you come to know Jesus?
So as a little girl, we went to Catholic church. So I went to Sunday school. But then, as a teenager, didn't go to church until I was about 24 and I met my husband, and he wasn't going to church at the time, but his sister and his mum were. And so they invited me to the Christmas pageant one year. And so I went along and just fell in love with it, the worship and the message. And, Christmas is a good time to fall in love with Jesus, I think. And so I started going to church with them, even though my husband wasn't. And then we just kept praying for him that he would kind of come along one day with us. And then a few years later, after he proposed, so he was my boyfriend at the time, but when he proposed, we just had a chat about how it'd be nice to have someone who knows us marry us. So he started coming to church as well, so that the pastor would kind of know both of us when we got married, to make the wedding more special. And then we just kept going. We just never stopped.
Michelle and Jono married, and soon afterwards started trying for their first child.
So we got married in 2012, and then 2014 we had a big holiday planned to go to a friend's wedding in Hawaii and then tour Europe together before we had kids. So the plan was always to start trying in Europe and just see what happened. But we started a couple of weeks before we left and fell pregnant straight away. So we got to the wedding in Hawaii and I was like, something doesn't really feel right. So I actually did a pregnancy test in the hotel room in Hawaii and found out I was pregnant with Preston. Yeah. Changed the rest of the trip.
I was going to say, were you unwell for that Europe trip?
Yeah, I had a bit of nausea, but just not being able to, eat all the soft cheese in France or drink the wine in Italy, no cocktails in Las Vegas, all that sort of stuff.
How were you feeling during those first few weeks? How was Jono feeling? What were the emotions surrounding it?
I think really excited, surprised it happened so quickly, but really just excited that this was the beginning of the next season for us. We'd been kind of working really hard in our careers, so this was just a real change of focus and just something joyful to look forward to.
And look forward they did. As far as pregnancies go, it was a pretty smooth ride for Michelle and Jono. But towards the end, things began to go wrong.
It wasn't until I was 34 weeks pregnant that I could tell something was wrong. And I went to work had a meeting one morning and then went to work, and I just the day before I'd felt a bit funny, like I couldn't feel the baby move. So I actually went to work and then said to my boss at work, do you mind if I just go to the hospital because I just can't stop thinking about this, like I can't feel the baby. And he was like, yeah, go. So I drove to the hospital, and I remember on the way there I was like, oh, should I go home and have lunch with my husband, or should I just go straight there? And I just had this feeling like, just get there. And yeah, within 15 minutes of arriving, they'd taken the baby out. They had a blood clot in my umbilical cord, and they said if you had been, an hour later, you wouldn't have a baby. Like they couldn't even do an epidural. They had to knock me out straight away and get Preston out.
What were the emotions surrounding that? Because, you'd had a smooth pregnancy up until then, and during something that's supposed to be such an exciting time, all of a sudden became super traumatic. How did you adapt to that as a new mum?
It was hard, especially once they said, an hour later and you wouldn't have a baby. For me, that was like, okay, there's 1 hour between life and death for my child. Like, so as a mum, the pressure of that, I became really anxious. I didn't let anybody else look after Preston. It was my job to keep him safe. And even I had to go to the dentist one day, and I made my husband come with me and sit in the waiting room. I wouldn't leave Preston at home in case something happened between me and the dentist getting back to him. It was full of anxiety, really. Yeah, I had to it was a process getting through that took a couple of years, just learning to trust in God that he did save Preston's life that first time, and that he was in this and he was going to keep looking after him.
How did you eventually start to let go?
I actually got really sick. So I was diagnosed with psychical vomiting syndrome. So every few weeks I would have these episodes where I would just be on the bathroom floor with stomach pain, and I'd be vomiting from anywhere from 8 to 48 hours. It was just horrible. And I had this little, I think he was almost 2 at the time, Preston, and I was couldn't look after him. I had to call friends to come over to sit with him while I was in the bathroom. When I was diagnosed with that, they said to me, there's no cure for this. This is a syndrome. You need to learn to live with it. You're going to have this for the rest of your life. And I started Googling. The doctor said, go check out all the blogs online. People write about this. And I was reading it, and I just felt so devastated that this was going to be my life. I just couldn't believe it. And I went to a church meeting that afternoon, and I remember the leader at church saying to me, and slowly the vomiting kind of slowed down, the gaps between it, until it eventually stopped.
So your health improved, and you and Jono decided that you wanted to start trying again for another baby, and it only took 2 months to fall pregnant the second time. How were you feeling?
I was feeling so excited. I just thought, this time, the second time around, you kind of think, okay, I know what I'm doing, and Preston's going to be an awesome big brother, and didn't expect any pregnancy problems, because they'd said that what happened with Preston at the end of the pregnancy was something that was kind of like a freak of nature, nothing caused it. There was no explanation. So, I was just overjoyed, really, and just really grateful that God was growing our family.
It was only a few weeks later when things began to go wrong. What happened?
I remember I was at a friend's kid's birthday party, and I just felt this real heaviness kind of in my stomach, or I guess my uterus. I just felt like there was a bowling ball or something there. I thought, I haven't experienced this before. Didn't know what it was. And then when we got home from the party, I went to the bathroom and realised I was bleeding. And still I was a bit I think that can be normal. I didn't know anything about it, about miscarrying or what would actually happen. I was a bit clueless in that respect. So I rang the midwife, and she said, look, if it's just a little bit of blood, it's probably fine. But if it gets heavier and darker, then you can head to the hospital. The bleeding got worse. So I went to the hospital, and they kind of took me straight through. So I kind of had this hope that even if whatever was happening, that they could fix it. But I didn't take Jonathan, my husband, with me. I left him at home with Preston because I was still a bit anxious. I didn't want Preston worried about me or not knowing where we were, sort of thing. So I went by myself, and it was just a lot of sitting around, and I saw the doctor a few times, and I was showing her photos what the blood looked like, and she just kept saying, "Oh, that's a substantial amount of blood," and I didn't really know what that meant, but that's all she would kind of say, and then she'd get me to go and sit for a while, and I was just full of fear and worry about what was happening. But I think it was being looked at the hospital like a real medical thing rather than a heartbreaking thing. And that's what I really was struggling with. And that, I think, sparked a lot of fear in me that if I did miscarry, that nobody would understand, that it would be a medical thing, and that, you know, I would be spending the rest of my life explaining to people why I'm sad, like why I feel this way, because I'd had friends who'd miscarried and I felt really sad for them, and I saw the pain they went through, but I didn't understand the grief. I didn't realize that it actually felt like you're losing a child. You know, you find out you're pregnant and you fall in love straight away, and you start planning their whole life from the moment you know you're pregnant. You just think, oh, this baby's going to have a birthday, you know, close to Preston's, and they can do this together, and wonder what they're going to be like or what they're going to look like. And you just have that, your family is just formed in your mind and your heart straight away. So I really had that fear with how the doctors were at the hospital, that this was going to be it now, that people were going to treat this like a medical problem rather than a baby that I'd lost.
So Michelle was left alone, heartbroken, surrounded by doctors, but still with no answers.
She came up to me kind of a few hours later, and it was actually the handover of doctors, and she was explaining like each patient what was happening, and I just burst into tears. And I remember her saying, "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" And I couldn't even talk. All I could get out was more bleeding, and I was just sobbing. And she took me into another room then, and she said, "Look, it's late at night. We don't have a scanning machine. I think go home and rest, and then just book in and get an ultrasound tomorrow." I mean, that night was horrible because you kind of know what's happening, but you don't want to let go of the hope. You just want to hold on to the hope that this is just some weird bleed, that your baby's still okay. And I remember I was sitting on the lounge with my husband, and I was crying, and I just said to him, like, I can't hear God speak. Like, usually I'm quite in tune with the Holy Spirit and I can hear God speak to me. And it was like he wasn't saying anything. And I went and had a shower, and I remember just crying out, and I said, "God, what's going on? Like, why aren't you talking to me?" And I just remember hearing the Lord say, "You're not listening. You need to listen." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm ready. Tell me, like, what's happening?" And he just said, "I need you to trust me." But as soon as I heard it, I just knew this wasn't like, "Trust me, your baby's okay, everything's going to be fine." I knew it was like, "Trust me that you're going to be okay. Like, whatever happens, I'm going to piece you back together. Like, you just need to trust me through this." So that was the moment I knew that I'd lost the baby. And then we had an ultrasound the next day that confirmed it. But I think I knew before that.
Michelle, how did you grieve in those first few weeks? Did you name your baby? Did you have any particular rituals that you went through?
There was a few different things. I cried a lot, and I started to, I don't know, I think the grief and the fear was really taking over, and I just knew we needed to share this, that we needed our friends and family to know that we'd lost a baby. I didn't want it to be this elephant in the room every time we saw people that I'd be thinking about. So yeah, we decided to share with our friends and family so that they knew what we were going through. And that was really hard because there was that fear that they wouldn't understand. I remember speaking to my mother-in-law just after we'd lost our baby and just saying that I guess that one of the hardest things was feeling like your baby, you know, and this sounds horrible, but feeling like the last signs of your child were in a public hospital toilet. You know, like that was just breaking my heart, that there was there was no goodbye, there was no closure, there was just no, there was just no dignity in it. It was horrible. And I remember she said to me, your baby went straight to heaven from your womb. Like, your baby didn't see the hospital. And so I held on to things like that with our faith. I had to keep trusting in God. We decided to name our baby because he was so real to us, and we wanted him to be real to everybody else as well. So we decided on the name Gabriel Luca, and we did a lot of research because we wanted the name to mean something. And Gabriel means God is my strength, and Luca means bringer of light. So we really wanted the baby's name to kind of, I guess, talk about how we were feeling in that time, that we needed God to be our strength, but also that he was going to be the light at the end of the tunnel. I probably pushed in to God more than I ever had before. So I remember I had moments like at night, just in bed, just crying. And then I kept hearing, you need to trust me, you need to trust me. And I remember just saying to God, I'll trust you, but I need you to give me something, like just give me something. And I remember the Lord saying to me, the angels are singing your baby to sleep. And as soon as I heard that, I just, I'd heard in the past that if you ever heard, the choir of angels singing, it was the most beautiful sound in the world. And so that kind of brought me this peace that I could just picture my baby like in the arms of an angel, just being sung to sleep. And that kind of gave me that peace that no matter what I was going through, that my baby was okay.
Soon afterwards, Michelle and Jono decided to start trying again and fell pregnant almost immediately, which came with complicated emotions.
I really had this feeling, like this desire that I wanted to get pregnant again. I also, though, had this feeling that I didn't want to replace Gabriel. Like, I was still mourning him. So it was like, I didn't want this baby to mean that I was forgetting the baby that I'd lost. So that was important to me as well. So it was just mixed emotions, really. But I knew that I wanted Preston to have a sibling, definitely. Like, I had the best little brother growing up, and I didn't want Preston to miss out on having a sibling. So, yeah, it was just a matter of really trusting God.
What happened in those first few weeks of your pregnancy?
I had planned to go to Featherdale Wildlife Park with my son and our friends who have another little boy his age. So I woke up in the morning that we were supposed to go, and I remember thinking, like something's wrong, this doesn't feel good. But Preston was really excited, and I remember thinking, it's just in your head, like everyone was so excited, ready to go see the animals. And I just said, I'm just going to go to the bathroom quickly before we go. And so I went into their house and, saw that I was bleeding again. And my heart just sank. Like, I just thought, how is this even possibly? Like, how is this happening again? I don't know if I'd blocked it. I didn't feel sad or grief or emotion with this one straight away. I just messaged my husband and I said, I'm bleeding. I think I'm losing this baby. Can you pray for me? And I remember he wrote back, yeah, I'm praying. Do you want me to meet you at the hospital? And I said, there's no point going to the hospital. It's done. And so I got in the car and we were just driving to Featherdale, and I was just thinking, like, I was trying to take part in the conversation. And I remember just sitting there thinking, wow, life really is just going on, even though this is happening inside me. And I was wondering why I wasn't bursting into tears, or like with the first one, like the emotions just overtook me straight away. But I think I just felt really numb this time. And I remember I didn't cry. I think it was a day later when The Voice came on TV, and my husband and I were just watching it. And one of the first songs one of the singers sang was Alleluia. And I just burst into tears. Like, I felt like I could really feel God in the room during that song. And just started crying. And then another song was the song Iris, where they say, like, I would give up forever to touch you. And that was just, for me, the whole thing with the babies that I lost was that, like, I didn't get to hold them. Just really, even today, thinking back, like, it's been 3 years, but what you wouldn't give just to hold them in your arms at least once,
You named your first baby that you lost, Gabrielle. Did you name this second baby as well?
Yes, so we named the next baby Rafi J. When we were naming the second baby, I really was looking at something like a meaning for the name that was a bit prophetic about not just what God was doing, but what God was going to do. And so we found the name Rafi, and it means God has healed. And I just loved that. Even though I didn't feel very healed, like I just felt like this is what God's going to do. And I'm just believing that God is going to heal me from this. The middle name J actually means to rejoice. So Rafi's name means God has healed, to rejoice. And that word rejoice, I really just held on to through this whole time, just believing that one day we were going to rejoice with a baby in our arms.
Finally, after, you lost Rafi, you were able to, start trying again and fall pregnant again. Was this process, did you feel a lot more fear?
Obviously there's that, like there was pockets of fear that would just come up, but I was really spending a lot of time with the Lord, and I'd started journaling everything that was happening, and I really feel that the Lord did such a work in me in that time after we lost Rafi. And I remember praying and saying to him, I don't want to keep miscarrying. So Lord, you just tell me when to try, when the next baby's supposed to be here. I'm not going to just keep trying. Like, I need a word from you. And the Lord dropped a song into my heart. How it says, I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I've got the month of May.
I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I've got the month of May.
And so I kept thinking, okay, so if we have a baby in May, kind of after all this season that we've been in, the sun would shine again. So I kind of counted back the 10 months and worked out when to start trying and to have a baby in May. And yeah, we got pregnant straight away again.
Wow. What were you feeling in those first few weeks of pregnancy?
One night I started vomiting again, but it was like the vomiting that I'd experienced before. So I started fearing that season had returned, or that illness had returned. So I was really sick one night, and then the next morning was actually my grandfather's funeral. And so we went to the funeral, and it was really hard for me to walk around or move. I was in a lot of pain, and I kind of got worried because we'd been trying to have a baby that I'd hurt myself vomiting inside, because I was in a lot of pain. So I went to see my GP after the funeral, and she said to me, I think you might have appendicitis. And so she sent me to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, and they did the test, and they came in and they said, look, we think that your appendix has ruptured already and we need to get it out. And they said, but you're also 3.5 weeks pregnant. And then every doctor and nurse that I'd come into contact with over the next few hours before the surgery were kind of saying, look, we don't want you to get your hopes up. You've got a major infection in your body, which can cause a miscarriage. And we're also about to operate very close to your womb. It's not likely that this baby is going to survive. So I went into surgery, and they said that the rupture was really bad. They removed part of my bowel. They took all the mess away. She said they did keyhole surgery, but she said we nearly had to cut you right open, the mess was so bad. And then in hospital while I was recovering, I had blood tests each day, which showed that my levels were still climbing. So the baby was still alive. And I just had a feeling at that time, wow, if this baby survived that, then this baby's going to be okay. And I remember thinking maybe that's why this happened, because God didn't want me to spend the next 9 months in fear, that maybe the appendix rupture was showing me just how strong this baby was and that this baby was going to make it.
A little spoiler alert here. The baby that Michelle was talking about, her little warrior, is that little voice that you can hear in the background of this podcast. Michelle and her baby made it through the rest of the pregnancy with the help of an amazing group of supporters.
We had our whole church praying for us, and one of my friends in particular, she's a real prayer warrior, and she got a vision while she was praying for me, and it was of me holding this full-term chubby-cheeked baby in my arms, and she said there was a ring, like a circle of fire around us, and she said she really felt the Lord was saying that he'd already been through the fire for this baby. And so that I really held on to that vision through that whole pregnancy, just thinking, you know, God's been through the fire and he's here to stay. You know, the spiritual battles that we don't even know about that God had already fought and won for this baby.
And the battles had been won indeed. After a long labour, Theodore Louis came into the world.
We named our baby Theodore Louis. Theodore means gift from God. And then Louis was after my grandfather, who passed away the day that we found out we were pregnant. And Louis actually means warrior. And I really felt like this baby had been through so much that he was forever to be my little warrior. And we were just, there's photos of me after giving birth to him because my husband's a photographer. So he was taking photos, and my eyes, like I've got this baby in my arms and my eyes are like full of tears, but just looking up. And I just remember that moment, just looking up, just thanking God that after everything we'd been through, that this baby was here. But also, you know, giving thanks for the babies that weren't here, because they ultimately shaped who I was in that moment. And I guess if the bittersweet thing is if they had survived, then we wouldn't have Theo with us today. So, you know, I don't know the big picture. None of us do, but I just have to trust that Theo was meant to be here and that, you know, we will all be together again one day.
And although Michelle still misses her babies dearly, she found comfort in a dear friend, the one who had the vision of Michelle with a baby inside a circle of fire.
My friend who got the vision, the first time I sent her a photo of Theo in the hospital, and I remember she wrote back to me and she said, "That's him, Mish. That's the baby that I saw in the vision." And I just burst into tears because I thought that was the vision that I was holding on to this whole time. And then she saw this chubby cheek baby, like in the flesh, in real life, who was here in my arms, and she just immediately knew that that was the baby from her vision. So yeah, God works in wonderful, amazing ways, and everyone's journey, especially with miscarriage, is different, but I'm not sure how I would have survived that without him.
That's amazing. Michelle, you have written a book about this whole experience called My Soul Waits. Can you tell me a little bit about it, you know, why you decided to share your experiences in this way?
Yeah, so I found the journaling process helped me as well through that season. And once I started just writing everything that was happening down, I really felt the Lord was kind of talking to me about a book that would help other people. And that's something that I really wanted at the start. When I first lost our first baby, I thought I was crying so much, but I really wanted to just get lost in a book about someone else's experience that, you know, I could cry with them and that would maybe help me get through it. So yeah, I just kept writing and writing. And then once that chapter was kind of finished in our lives, we decided, like I just kept praying and decided to turn it into a book, and hopefully other mums can kind of get lost in our story as well, and it might help them through and they might find hope in what we've gone through.
What's your encouragement to a woman who's listening right now and may have recently miscarried or gone through a miscarriage in the past?
Everything that you feel is warranted. Like, this was a life inside of you, this was your baby, and I just would want every woman going through that to know that their baby is real and that God loves their baby and that God loves them. And if they're still trying, like if they don't have a baby in their arms yet, just to try and stay in that place of hope and really press into God in hope for the future, whatever that looks like. Just know that God is going to be there with them and protect them and comfort them when they need it and give them strength, because having your hope in God is really the only safe place to have it.
Thank you so much to Michelle for sharing her story so vulnerably and courageously. To find out more about Michelle's book, My Soul Waits, the details are in the show notes. If today's story impacted you and you require support, the SANS Miscarriage, Stillborn and Newborn Death Support Line is available 24/7 on 1300 308 307 or visit sans.org.au. And that information is also in the show notes. I'm Georgia, and thank you for listening to this episode of Finding Hope. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can send me an email, a review, or share it with your friends. Stories are always better when they're shared, and you never know what you can learn from someone else's journey. If you or someone you know has a story of hope to share and you'd like to be interviewed for this podcast, I'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the Finding Hope page at hopepodcasts.com.au. For now, I'll leave you with this verse, one that got Michelle through some tough times. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us. Romans 5, verses 3 to 5. Catch you next time.
This is a Hope 1032 production. Thanks for listening.